Welcome back to The Walk. I'm excited to be here on another episode and getting to share just real stories of individuals and their experience with God. And today I have Ireland with me, and I'm really happy and excited to have Ireland here. So Ireland, why don't you introduce yourself?
So my name's Ireland Stubblefield. I'm 17, and I'm a junior at College Place High School, but I'm doing running start at CC this year. I've been going to Life Church. That's the church that me and Josh both go to since I was, I think the second grade is when my dad first introduced us. But I've been more plugged in for the past 3 years. I joined an internship called Prime at our church when I was a freshman. So that's been kind of my journey with Life Church and just discipleship and growing with the Lord the past 3 years. So, yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
So what was your experience with God before Life Church?
So something that's kind of unique about my story, I've always been super connected to God, like and super spiritual ever since I was really young.
Right.
So when I was really little, like I think when I was 4, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and I had also I had Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid, overactive thyroid, and ever since I was super young, I always had this really deep connection with God, and I remember it really surprised my parents because even before we would go to church, we used to go to the Presbyterian church in College Place. I always would talk about God and talk about Jesus and want to like read books about him. And like I remember when I think I was 6 years old. Actually, when I was 6, it was the first time we came to Life Church. Right. I was about to have to go in for a procedure that would mean I would have to have IV treatments every week for years, like almost pretty much for the rest of my life. Right. And my dad brought us to Life Church, and we walked in, and I told my mom, I don't know why, but I just feel like God wants to heal me today. Like, because the procedure with the doctor determining if we'd have to go through with it, and we came in to the church, and we went up to the front, and somebody saw me, and they were like, I don't know why, but I feel like I need to pray for you. And my mom just talks about how, I don't really remember because I was little, but she always saw this. I just had this childlike belief, faith from a really young age, and specifically in that moment. And we went back to the doctor. They were like, I don't know how, but you're not completely healed, but you don't have to go through with the IV treatments. Right. So that's kind of like my childhood, and but I played competitive softball growing up. So my childhood of elementary school, I wasn't really spending a lot of time in church, like Life Church specifically. And then throughout middle school, I started coming to youth group, and I really enjoyed it, but I was still super shy. And there was a part of me that had a longing for being rooted in a church and really being connected, and instead of just leaving and coming and going and nobody really knowing. So I would say Life Church, I would say Prime and fellowship with people actually knowing more than my name totally changed. Just, I don't know, community brought me so much deeper, a deeper revelation of who God was, and that not only I would be close to the Lord when I was doing super good, but also when I was having moments of doubt. As I went through high school, it totally saved me through feeling moments when you're just struggling with the Lord or struggling with, life when it's happening. So yeah, I would say Life Church brought me into community, but I've always known the Lord. So yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I like how you share this early just love and attraction to God, and he's just he knew that he needed to be there, and then the details how it works out, that kind of then grows from there. Tell me about. I'm not doing an advertisement for Prime, but I want to hear about this Prime because it seems like that played a role in your life. So
Prime was designed during COVID because there's different discipleship programs. There's Impact, which is for 18 and older, which is more for adults, and it happens once a week. And then there's Forge and Foundry, which is a more intense Bible college for people who have graduated high school, 18 to 25. So, but Prime was created during COVID because they wanted something for young people to have something to look forward to and not be because depression was something that was really happening, especially in my generation during COVID. So I remember it was the first week that we had LYC together, in October of 2020. Yeah, I think 2020, yeah. And, yeah, I remember they went up on the stage and they said, hey, we're having this Prime internship, and you should join if you want to grow with God. So I was super excited because there was nothing else going on except school, which was, like, not really even happening. So I remember when I joined, we would meet twice a week, and we were given mentors. There was probably 15 of us. Mm-hmm. We were all from freshmen to high schoolers, and there would just be weekly lessons. We would learn more about who God was. We truly got to know each other. Like, mm-hmm. It wasn't just like you say hi, then you like how I said before in middle school. That's sort of how I felt. Mm-hmm. But I truly had people that were older than me being an example. Leaders who were in Forge would teach and speak, and it was just cool because there was a group of young people who went to the same school. We're all connected, going towards God.
Right.
So, it was the first step that really, and it progressed throughout the past 3 years. It's progressed now. There's even middle school, so the high schoolers and middle schoolers are now combined into this Prime program. Mm-hmm. So it's super cool how much it's evolved. Right. Yeah, but for me, like I said, the main thing was just learning more about God and the mm-hmm. Bible, mm-hmm. but just the fellowship and the community that I gained from Prime, and just the freedom of feeling like nobody in my school believed like I did. So
right.
Yeah.
I would think that's a big part, right, when you talk about that, having the community, and so mm-hmm. you talk about school, and obviously there's a lot of challenges in high school that you encounter here, not to add another complexity, a pandemic, by the way, so now you're that's changing the way you're doing high school.
Yeah.
Depression, anxieties, all those different things can play a big role. Right, so community being a big part about Prime. And so my kids, for example, we started with private schools, Christian schools.
Yeah.
And at some point, I felt like I should transition them out to public schools, because I felt, well, during these years of influence that I have them in my house, wouldn't it be good for me to sort of be able to be around when they're streaming up or swimming upstream?
Right. Yeah.
In Christian school, and I'm not saying that I'm not being negative about it at all, but it is going with the flow.
Yeah.
And one of the experiences that I ran into when I graduated from high school and with friends is then they encountered the world, and the world was so different that it almost was like a bit of a shell shock. And for many people, they even abandoned God completely and out of their life. And so I want to hear more about this community that you built. That suddenly you get a chance to meet other peers your age who are going through various, at least age-wise, developmentally, school and college and all these different challenges that are going on. But then being able to have that partnership, in that you share a love for God and desire to have him part of your life. So, would you mind sharing more about that?
So, for the first few years, now the people in Prime actually do go to my high school, but there was a few that went to Wall High, but a majority of them were actually homeschooled. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't necessarily like when I would go to school, I was like, okay, I can just go hang out with my friends from church and then I'll be fine. Mm-hmm. I think it was like, I felt it was something was different about the friendships and just the level of trust and like authenticity and that we gained throughout Prime.
Right.
So it was, I think for me more, it was like knowing that when I would go to school, I had people that I knew know me, and that also, like, I didn't have to do the other things that kids were doing, like, gossip or, like, do vape, do all the different stuff that I knew would lead to something not good. Mm-hmm. Not because I was, like, I thought I was better, but I had people that I knew would hold me accountable, first of all, but also knew me, and I didn't need to do those things for them to love me.
Right.
So I think
did you feel a lot of those pressures before when you were at college place by yourself and didn't really have any other Christian classmates?
I felt not like I wanted to do it, but I felt like, I guess I felt like different, but I didn't know why, because I didn't want to do it, and I just felt like, well, am I just weird? Like, should I just, like, there's moments where I felt like, okay, should I just, like, cave in, Mm-hmm. So I think what I really gained in the past couple years, not only like my peers, but a big part for me has been people that are older than me. I've always been like, people say like I'm an old soul. Like I love to be around people that are not only like with me, but also like people that I want to be like.
Yeah.
A few years down the road.
Very smart, by the way.
Yeah. So yeah, so specifically, like, having, like, mentors, people that are older, like, specifically for me, it was Reagan. She did Fortune Foundry, and Pastor Eden, and even, like, my parents, just having people set the standard so that way I was able to not be influenced by, like, people that weren't living the lifestyle I wanted. Anyways, like I was saying, with school and, like, just pure, like, not peer pressure, just peer comparison with certain things, there would be days where I would, like, call her and be like, I don't know why, like, everybody my age is doing this, like, why does it matter? Like, it's super easy to just see, like, right now and not think from a bigger perspective, or, like, a few years down the road, or even just, like, God's perspective of what's happening. And yeah, having, like, a mentor, being able to keep me grounded and know my morals, know my values, know how God sees me, how God has purpose on my life, was super important for me. It was, like, specifically, like, just in high school, I really needed that, like, not just to come to youth group, but I needed somebody to, like, hold me truly accountable, like, text me and call me and be like, okay, how can we grow in this, and how can we know this truth? What does the Bible say about that versus what does your friends? Because for me, a lot of my friends that through high school, like, I felt through God, it's really easy for me to connect with everybody, like, regardless of if they do go to church or if they believe the same thing in me. It's like, I feel like God's gifted me with a personality that's super, like I'm kind of like a butterfly. I can go to all these different groups, and it doesn't, like, make me feel uncomfortable if I'm around people that are different than me.
Sure.
But to still have Reagan or people, or multiple different people.
Right.
But my community that kept me grounded in that, so that I could come back to youth group. I could come back on Sunday, or spend time with the Lord on my own to make sure that I'm not being swayed to, think in ways that aren't right, but to still, treat people with respect and to love people regardless of if they think the exact same way that I do. So yeah, that's what having a mentor and community has done. It's allowed me to have influence and not be, affected in a negative way.
So I was talking to your dad about recording, and then he told me one of the things that I thought was I really enjoyed hearing when he said that, is you said, well, he took me to live church. But your dad describes you as being this kind of catalyst, or like this big force to help get your family closer to God. Right. And not just him and your mom, but also even your grandparents. Yeah. And that's such a cool, neat thing to hear, because you're young. So he described as you being, like, so influential in getting your family closer to God, your parents and your grandparents. Yeah. And again, that is amazing, just because it typically is parents that get the child closer to God. Right. And it's one thing to say, I've been a witness to the world out there, but it's, I think, even more impressive to say, like, to my own family. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I was actually just talking to Beth Toon about this. We were talking about, during the Legacy series, how our family has sort of experienced a reverse of the typical legacy. Yes. And, yeah, and even, like, connecting with other people who have had some just, like, religious perspective. I think it's something that I love to share about my story is, like you said, a lot of times it's like, okay, my parents, like, forced me to go to church, and I had to sit in the front row, and I hated it because it felt like it wasn't my will, or, you know what I mean? Super religious experiences, which is a lot of times what I run into when I'm talking about my faith with people. So for me, not only, like, getting plugged in, like I said, with Prime, that's probably one of the main things that I've seen in my family with my parents joining Impact. They had no idea. They saw my dad and me have talked about how he saw the change in me from just the fulfillment of life, of, like, serving other people, and getting plugged into the church is, like, it just taught me and that, life's not always just about ourselves and just our relationship with the Lord. It's like, what can I give to other people? Right. So, yeah, with my parents, it was so powerful, because what's great about these programs is that not only do you give, but you receive so much from other people, like people feeling, like, pouring into your life, people, just strongholds getting broken off of you that you never thought could, and a way of community. So yeah, so not only that, but also a big part of my relationship with the Lord, sort of unique. So I work at a golf course. I work at Wine Valley, and a big place where the Lord's met me is actually on the golf course and listening. I listen to this. It's not podcast. It's YouTube videos from Pastor Andrew Damasio. He's from Rose Church in Portland,
Right.
and I've been listening to him for the past probably 2 years, and that's where I've learned. I have like this really interesting memory. I can remember a lot, like everything I hear. I really love to like just soak up from people, like I said, that are older than me. So I just I just would listen every single day and like just take in and learn more about the Lord every single time. So when I would come home, they would just like hear me talk about God in this new way that they've never even understood. And it's like, it just like was so eye-opening, specifically to my parents, to just see me be able to be healed from like depression and like anxiety. And then even like with Pastor Andrew, my dad started listening to him. Then it was like, okay, well, this has connected us in a way of God, that we both can have this perspective of God through this other pastor.
Right.
And yeah, it's just so, me and my dad were just talking about how it's so powerful, like going to church. Like he said, I never would have thought to go to church is like just part of my day. He's like, I don't even think about it. We just wake up and it's just what we do. It's a part of us now.
Right.
And even like with my grandma now, she's just joined Impact, and she's going through the same experience where she's learning the fulfillment of serving other people, and to have so many people surrounding her. It's so powerful to see that, like that one yes that I made 3 years ago to do Prime had like this snowball effect and has trickled its way back up to my grandparents.
Praise God.
It's so powerful. It's like,
that is powerful.
Yeah, and it's just so cool because, I mean, like, now my dad can be impactful at the fire department, and my mom in her hair salon, and, you know, like, it's so cool that
becomes
God,
exponential, right?
Yeah, and it can go everywhere, and that God can use. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's if you have a heart and you say yes, God, I don't know. It's it's powerful that He calls us even when we're young teenagers,
right?
You know.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to say about having a heart that listens, also. Because I think He calls a lot of people, and some people just don't listen. So that says a lot about you, also your desire and your willingness to hear God, and that is something that stands out when I talk to him. He's like she is different. Like she's got a good heart. She loves God, and that's evident. Yeah. And that's just amazing to think about the witness that you have been to your parents and your grandma now.
Yeah.
How about, you talked about depression? You mentioned that a couple times.
Yeah.
You want to share a lot about struggles with depression, or and then how God played a role in that? Right. Maybe. Yeah. So go ahead.
So for me, I never had experienced depression all throughout my life, really. I mean, there's been moments where I was like sad, but I had been blessed with such a great life, great parents, my relationship with God, you know. So last year my life kind of threw a curveball. I went through a really interesting situation with my school, and there was just like a court situation investigation going on at the school. And it was really hard. It felt like I had been thrown this really heavy weight of like adult situations, and I just didn't. And at that point, I really was struggling with my relationship with God and my relationships with the church. I was just kind of coming, but I had like this like bitterness towards God and the church, because I felt like I was really scared to tell somebody what was going on in my life. And that was actually when I talked to Reagan. That was the first time I talked to her. And that's when our friendship started, is because through all the justice, going to court and all those different things, she was able to truly like be my friend through that. She came with me. We would pray every Wednesday night. We would, like she would text me, we'd talk to each other. So yeah, I experienced just feeling, just so confused and just lethargic, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life anymore, didn't really understand, what God had for me, or like if I could even make it out. It just felt like a tunnel that was endlessly like black.
Right. How old do you think you were?
I was 16.
Okay.
It was last year. But it was just so good because God was still, like, looking back now, I'm so thankful for it because, like, he was still so good. Like, the fact that I got to come to youth group and, like, still experience and hear what a good story that really has meant a lot to me is the story of John the Baptist when he was in a prison cell. He was about to be beheaded, and he has a moment where he's like, he doubts God, and he's like, okay, go ask Jesus if he is who he says he is, right? And they're like, Jesus says, go back and tell him what you've seen and you've heard. And I learned in that moment that when I can't see God, I need to hear what he's doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for me, that meant a lot to have somebody be like, nope, he's still good, he's still moving, he's still doing these things. And he still spoke to me, and it was through like my job, like going to the golf course, like he gave me these spaces of escape. And and that he still was pursuing me through it, just slowly but surely. He really just brought that light closer to me through that dark tunnel. And through the end, I received just freedom through different experiences like camp and just even like therapy and stuff like that. God teaching me that it's okay that he truly does care about my soul, not just me being spiritually perfect and emotionally not okay. So yeah, I learned a lot about how God really cares about my soul, and that he wants me to be okay altogether, and that he really loves me, not just my performance or me looking the part. So yeah.
You talked about hearing God when you can't see him, and so you gave some examples of things that happened, and but tell me more about how you hear. How did you hear God? What did you do to seek him? So you could be able to hear him.
Yeah, there was a few different things. I think, and I think it's like something that each person has to like. I think that God knows how we hear him. Right. He speaks to us in different ways. Like for me. Like being in my car and like driving and worshiping, that's one of the things, like for me individually with the Lord was something super big. Like just like when I would be in the car and I'd be worshiping, it was like everything that I was struggling with kind of went away. It was like it just felt like almost like time didn't really matter, that he had won the battle. So hearing songs, hearing people worshiping the Lord, which then eventually just also singing like myself and being like, okay, he is still good and he is worthy of praise, even though I feel stuck, just also prayer, other people knowing, being real, being authentic about like, okay, this is what's going on. And I mean, I know that some people don't have that necessarily, which is tricky, but so yeah, for me it was having people know what's going on. I would also say being really intentional about what I listen to and what I watch. Yeah. Because it can be the other way around. When you can't see, you better be intentional about what you listen to, because what you listen to paints a picture for what you see.
Yeah, you're right.
So for me, it was like, okay, I could either listen to like people that are going to tell me, well, it is what it is, like, or like be super like sad music, or like, you know what I mean? Because it's super easy to get stuck. So, I think the Lord guided me on, okay, this is how, spend time listening to Pastor Andrew, spend time, reading the Word, spend time, with your family. It was really my family, truly, that was my support system, as well as my church community. But yeah, that's what I would say. Just being intentional about that as well was how I heard the Lord. But
that's so good. You have a lot of wisdom, and that's very evident, and that's so neat. That's a lesson that I am here at 43 learning so much, the importance of like what I put into my mind and I don't know why it shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah.
It has a direct effect on how I feel and how I do and where I'm going, where my vision is, where my focus is.
Yeah.
In high school, I used to listen to gangster rap. Was big at that time, so I listened to gangster rap at night. And when I listen to those songs again, and I'm like, those lyrics come out, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that. I used to just sing those lyrics without even thinking about what they said.
For sure.
And now, as I safeguard what I listen to and have it be worship music that elevates me, because I need it, not because I'm good and holy, but because like, no, I need that elevation, because if I don't,
it's real.
If I don't go that direction, I know which direction Josh wants to go, and that's not the direction I want to go in. And so, like, choosing that focus, and then also for anyone who's not listening, so you work, you have probably like a 10-minute drive to work. So it's kind of a neat that you have a job even just on your way to work.
Right.
You said for me is in a car listening to music. You actually kind of get this opportunity to reach to God both on your way and from away from work.
Yeah.
And then also you talking about at work. By the way, I get a chance to listen to sermons from Pastor Andrew.
Yeah. And I've learned a lot about, that's one of the main takeaways, I think, for when I was really at my lowest. I think that was the biggest revelation I had, is he explained to me, Pastor Andrew, was talking about how we're a body, a spirit, and a soul. And he really emphasized on how God cares about your soul. And that totally was shocking to me. Even though I have had a relationship with God, it was like, wow, like to think like, okay, we're fighting this war between ourselves, the devil, and the world. Like, we have to be aware of that. There's things that are influencing us, in that not only does God want to like restore and mend us, but he also wants us to protect our souls from that stuff that is so easily creeps in, you know. Right.
And
so easy.
We have a choice in what we do.
Yeah.
For me, having gone through a recent season of a lot of struggle and depression being a big issue, one of the lessons I learned was I can't control my circumstance, but I do control my response. Yeah. And being able to, even though you're feeling down, feeling depressed, I can choose to worship in the middle of that, and there's power in that.
It's powerful.
And if you're trying to claw your way out, like it's an excellent tool. As far as the power of what worship can do. Not when you're feeling great and life is all good, but actually when things are hard, when you're struggling. Yeah. And how God can come and meet you at that point, and you can hear him. Yeah. I talked about maybe having a verse that you felt that maybe has been important to you and in your life, and kind of maybe helps a framework or perspective. What do you think? So,
this was a verse that was prophesied over me when I was kind of in this season. I would say, like, sort of like in this wilderness. Yes. So it's Isaiah 40, and then it says, "Listen, it's the voice of someone shouting, 'Clear the way through the wilderness for the Lord. Make a straight highway through the wasteland for our God. Fill in the valleys and level the mountains and hills, straight the curves and smooth out the rough places. Then the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all the people will see it through.'" And then it says at the end of it, "But those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. They will soar high on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." I just love that, because I identified with the idea of being in a wilderness for so long. Like, well, it felt forever. Obviously, it was only a year. But, yeah, that verse was just powerful, because, first of all, that it was, like, prophesied over me, and that prophecy was something that I never really experienced. But to have somebody, like, know, like, something that I needed to hear that was so,
and they had no idea where you were.
Yeah, it was so connected to what I was feeling. I was like, okay, well, this is obviously what God wanted me to hear. Yes. You know, so it's just meant a lot to me that God, and I think specifically on the topic of the wilderness, what I've also learned is that I find really encouraging, that I also wanted to share, that I love about my experience with depression and like going through that year, was it gave me a new language for people. I feel like the wilderness gave me perspective, and it gave me something that, okay, I've been there, you know? It's not just something that I could be like, okay, well, if you're sad, just pray about it, you know what I mean? Yes. So now, like, when I meet people at youth group that are going through something, I can, not necessarily, I'm not them, but I've learned that God is not only a God of highs, he's a God of the wilderness, and he's the same everywhere. There's a verse that says, "I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob," which is interesting, because Jacob was, like, in a moment of wrestling with God. So it's interesting, God is sort of saying, like, I'm a God of the fulfillment, I'm a God of the promise, and I'm a God of the wrestling. Right. And I meet you everywhere. You know what I mean? So yeah, like the wilderness showed me the consistency of the Lord, I think, as well. Mm-hmm. And that's something that is powerful for me to, when talking to people and connecting with people in a new way, is like encouraging them that he's not, if you're going through something, he hasn't left you. Mm-hmm. He's with you still, you know, right. in a new way.
So as you describe that wilderness, I imagine that the verse probably gives you some hope, right? So you're in this place where it
right.
feels like there's a tunnel, there's no way out.
Yeah.
And even though you look back now and you say, well, it's just a year, but when you're in the middle of it, you don't know when it's going to end. Mm-hmm. And often it feels like it's never going to end.
Yeah.
And so we get tired, we get weary, and
right.
I imagine that you probably had this prophesied over you. You read the verse.
Yeah.
But it wasn't it. You probably have to go back to this over and over and kind of sort of repeating it until you start to believe it or start moving in that direction, or not.
Yeah, I would say what I liked about it is specifically that it was, like you said, like you don't know when it's going to end, but it showed that even if it doesn't end tomorrow, God's still there, you know, right. And that there's like this analogy about how it's about a tree and how for sap to grow, it's really important in the winter that it like builds in the foundation, and that in the wilderness though nobody likes the winter. Nobody likes the winter because it's cold. Right. But it's super important for that tree to go through the winter because that's when the sap builds and produces, so it can come up to make the tree grow.
Right.
So I think it just gave me a deeper perspective of, well, it may not feel like the top, but it's part of the process. It's part of God. It's part of my walk with the Lord.
Right.
You know, and it's just good. Like he's consistent.
Right.
So.
And you're able to look back now, and it's nice that you're in a better place now.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you can look back and say, okay, that was my wilderness,
right.
And then that was a season that God was able to bring me through. As obviously, life isn't a movie that it has this happy ending and it just ends.
Yeah.
I mean, we will eventually have a happy ending. God's promised that
for sure,
to
of
us.
course,
we will.
heaven.
But what do you think you can take away from that? Let's say if you do encounter another season where depression becomes your, like, how do you feel? Because I think it makes a difference between when someone's a victim and a victor. The victor uses those circumstances and they recognize and saying, like, look, God had a process here. He helped me get stronger. My roots got deeper, like the tree analogy that you say. I was able to get the sap, and then now I'm able to move forward. But you know, the devil attacks us, and the reality is he can attack us tomorrow again and try to come at it. And so, what do you think you took from that maybe you'd be able to apply, or not even just yourself, but maybe also to someone else who's listening, who's saying, you know, I'm going through depression, whether they're a teenager in high school or whether they're a 70-year-old person who their spouse just died. Like, well, anything you'd advise or recommend? Yeah,
and I think for sure also the thing about like feeling depression, not all depression has to be like it lasted this many months. Like you said, it can be a daily thing that comes and goes, and it doesn't really warn you. It just creeps in. It doesn't. Right. I would say, for me, like, I think saying it out loud, confessing to somebody, not just being like in my head, like, okay, because that's something that I do. I've really struggled in the past with like overthinking, and of course, like, the Lord can meet us like in our own heads, but something that I found has been really powerful is not only being like, oh, I feel really sad, like in my head, like saying this, like, I don't know why, like, God, can you help me? Like, which is, you can't, of course, has power. Right. But for me, I found a lot of strength in saying things out loud. Not sometimes just by myself, like in my room or in my car, being like, I want to submit this to you. Like, I don't want to hide this from you. I want to surrender it. But also even to other people, and having people pray for me, and having people that have been able to ground me and put it back into perspective. Like, okay, like I found, like there was a few weeks ago actually where I had a similar situation where I was feeling all the emotions again that I had, and I called Reagan and I was like, Reagan, I don't know why this is happening, but I feel stuck. Like I'm feeling all the things. I thought that I was free from this, and it's like sometimes it's frustrating. It's like, wait, is freedom, is being okay like just a stamp and it's forever, or is it like oh, you're actually still damaged goods,
Right, right.
So, yeah, that conversation was, after talking to her for a couple of hours, I was like, okay, I'm okay. I just needed to say it, and I needed to say it out loud to show, okay, like, this isn't gonna defeat me,
Right.
Like, the thing is, like you said, like, the devil, he's consistent, he's gonna consistently come after us, not just like, oh, I did that for then, now you're good, like, you know what I mean? So, especially after we come out of seasons of depression, that's when he's, like, intimidated by us, because we're gonna go off and we're gonna share our stories and help other people.
Right.
So, yeah, just be aware of that he's the Lord's pursuing us, but the devil also is, and to lean into people that have God's perspective on your life and have seen what he's done as well.
Right, because spiritual warfare is real. I mean,
real.
It's real, yeah. And then I think it's easy to forget sometimes we caught up in this world, and it's just troubles of this world. It's like, no, there's spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
But you highlight, again, the importance of community. And here this time you said, I reached out again to this friend that I had, and there's something about this being open and vulnerability and sharing that with someone. And then in that vulnerability is actually strength.
Yeah.
Because that's how you get stronger. And I think so many times the devil uses shame to keep us like silent, so we don't share anything, because maybe I'm the only one that's going through this, or maybe no one else, or maybe I don't deserve to be feeling well, maybe whatever it is going on. And it seemed like you were like, well, I know what I need to do. I'm going to reach my community. I'm going to make a contact and have a conversation. Sure. And then that's encouraging. That's the whole iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
Part where two are better than one.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, and even on the part, there was a story I was listening to. It's about Jesus, and it was a story of this guy who was blind, and he couldn't see. He was trying to make his way through the crowd to find Jesus, and he made his way up to Jesus, and he was like, Lord, will you heal me? And then Jesus asked him, he said, what do you want from me? Like, what do you want me to do for you?
Right.
And then, like, when we read that, we're like, well, isn't that kind of insulting? Like, obviously I'm blind. Obviously I want you to heal me. But what I learned from it was the significance of Jesus saying, I want you to say it. I want you to tell me what you want from me. Because it's so powerful. And I was like, that is so good. That there's power. Like, even then, like, I was thinking, like, like when you're young and you have, like, your first crush, and it's like, it didn't mean anything until you, like, say it. And then when you say it, it became so much more real. So it's like, the Lord spoke to me in that moment of, like, you have power when you talk. I've given you an authority to have freedom when you say out loud what's hurting you or what's bothering you. And that when you say it, I'll move, So yeah, that's another part on that. But
as a dad and as someone who works in healthcare, I think about so often, that is actually a very common question. What's going on, and there's something for the individual to not only say it to God, but even to yourself, to recognize this is the situation, this is where I'm at. And because often it seems like at least I can lie to myself and say, no, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. And there's something to say, no, like, God, I'm broken. Or God, I'm hurting. God, I'm scared. God, I'm whatever. And then can you help me with this? And of course, he's more than happy to help us out, whether it's a miracle that takes it away, or whether it's just holding our hand through it while we're going through, whichever. You've shared so much. Anything that you feel that we should talk about that I haven't discussed?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm glad I have the opportunity to share some of my story. I might be like a younger person, but still, I love that we can soak out wisdom for people that are older than us and younger than us, that discipleship, and it goes everywhere, and I love it that we can learn from each other, from as long as, like, specifically that if God's our leader and that he's the ultimate person that's directing our path. So yeah.
And in Timothy, I mean, it's biblical. Don't let anyone discount you because of your youth. I think that's even another lesson I think that we can try to learn, especially for young people. Is that I think the devil can try to convince us, say, like, I got nothing to offer. I'm just and that's not true. Here you are, and it's not just your perspective. It's actually your dad's perspective, saying, look, our family is closer to God because of our daughter. and so that's amazing. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing your story with us, for also just for sharing God's love, even with your family. It just, I mean, and I know you're just living your life, but that's an amazing testament that you are, and so thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor to talk with you, and
Good.
yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you guys if you like what you're listening to, please share it. This is just a ministry, and just the point is to be encouraging. So feel free to share with someone if you like it. There is a Facebook page you can follow if you find that to be helpful. But thank you, and God bless you.